Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. So I've seen this a lot in my comment section. Every single time I make a YouTube video, there's always someone saying how 2016 was 100% wrong in the polling numbers and that somehow this invalidates my points in any of my videos. So number one, that's wrong. And number two, when we get down to it, we're going to look at a pretty in-depth analysis of these polling numbers and see where it shows Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump in each of these states and compare it to the real results. Now, I will say there are some states that did get a little bit more Republican based off polling numbers compared to the general election, but those were already Republican states. States like South Dakota or Montana or Tennessee, none of these states were expected to go blue whatsoever. There was not a single poll that showed those states going blue. So, again, the polls weren't necessarily wrong about that. The polls were right except for 4 states, and one of them emphasized Donald Trump's support in one of these key swing states. And when it comes down to it, Hillary Clinton, she didn't have such a large lead, and when the final polls were taken, she had a 3.2% lead, according to the Real Clear Politics average. She won by 2.1%. Okay, some of the more accurate ones were ones that predicted a 3% win in these two-way races between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. There wasn't that much of a swing. This was a 1.1% swing from the RCP average to the final results. So polling numbers weren't necessarily wrong on the popular vote. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. She won it by 2.1%, and the average said she would win it by 3.2%. So that's not that much of a difference. When it comes down to it, here we have the generic congressional vote. And a lot of people like to point out singular pollsters. Well, when it comes down to it, if you take Rasmussen, well, it shows the Democrats ahead by 7. A lot of people want to point out Rasmussen for the president's approval rating. It was, let's go to the four-way race here. It was the most accurate pollster, in my opinion, even though the polls weren't necessarily taken right up into the election, but it showed Clinton ahead by 2. No other pollster was able to do that. However, when it comes down to the president's approval rating, a lot of people like to say they have the same accuracy of polling that shows the president disapproved -1. But these other polls weren't necessarily off by that much either. Even what a lot of people like to point out, Fox News, Clinton +4. Okay, does that mean all Fox News polls are wrong? No. Just because Rasmussen was right once doesn't mean they're always right, and just because some polls were wrong once doesn't mean they're always wrong. I'm not saying Rasmussen is not trustable whatsoever. I do trust these numbers, but there is a reason why it's an outlier. There is absolutely no way 49% of the country approves of the president when almost every other poll has him in the low 40s or sometimes in the high 30s. There is a reason this is an outlier. There's no way that the country is somehow feeling this way one day and feeling the other day, and that drastic of a change. -13 to -8 to -1. Okay, I think the numbers are around -4 to -9. I don't trust these -17, -13, but they are still something to point out. But when we see a poll that has consistently been not with all the other polls, if we point out Rasmussen right here, -1. Okay, so here it is, -1. Again, -8. -10. So other times it does show the president around the areas, but I believe this was later into the year. Once we start going up, I don't know why they aren't showing them. A lot of people like to point out Rasmussen, including the president. That is his go-to at this point in time because it does show him at his highest approval rating. I really do not. I'm genuinely surprised that they did not take any polls since June, which doesn't make any sense because okay, whatever. Rasmussen shows 49% to 50%. That's not the numbers that we've been seeing in every other poll. And actually, if we go to the 538 average, I'm not going to pull it up now, but they do adjust the polling numbers for President Trump. So when it comes down to, if we look at this map right here, not map, really a chart right here, he started off with being approved by a very narrow amount, and then all of a sudden the disapprove rating started coming up really fast. I don't know why Real Clear Politics chooses to pretty much refresh the page every second, but still, we finish off with disapprove +9. So we started off early, and then all of a sudden, disapprove. And we finish off with 43.3% for the president. We see 49% for Rasmussen reports and 50% for the disapprove. So let's say you do trust Rasmussen and do not trust anything else. You have to admit that the Democrats are ahead by 7%, according to the same pollster that you trust so closely to your heart. If you are saying that the president has a 49% approval rating, you must also admit that the Democrats are ahead 7% nationwide. So clearly, if you're only going to take certain polls and use them to your advantage and then discard others, that is something that really does not move forward our political discussion whatsoever. Polling numbers were not wrong in 2016, and here's why. Here's the map based off polling in 2016 if we take the Real Clear Politics average in every single state. Donald Trump would have lost the election with 266 electoral votes, and Hillary Clinton had 272. Where's this landslide everyone likes to point out? Where was a time where Clinton is leading in Kansas? That's not true. Clinton isn't leading in Texas or Georgia or Arizona. She's not leading in any of these states. She's not leading in Ohio, Iowa, Indiana, Missouri, Montana, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. None of these states she's leading in. The only states that were wrong that she led in, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Michigan and Pennsylvania were both within the margin of error, which means that it did have a great possibility of going to Trump. It was within the margin of error that was given out by the pollsters, so people would know that there is a possibility for this. In Wisconsin, it's another story. That was the only state that was truly incorrect out of all 50 states in the union. Nevada was another state within the margin of error that showed a Donald Trump victory. Obviously, he did not win the state of Nevada. So again, that poll may have oversampled Trump Republicans or Republicans in general and showed a Trump victory in that state. So let's compare the map. This is the polling map, and now this is the actual results based off margins. So obviously parts of the Midwest and up across, the red wall, the South, did get a little bit more Republican compared to this map. But the polling always suggested a Trump victory in these states, and they were right. Whether or not the margins were right or not, that's another story. But polling wasn't necessarily incorrect. It showed a Trump victory in Iowa, in Ohio, in North Carolina, in Georgia, in Florida, in Arizona. And what do we see now? A Trump victory in Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Arizona. So the only states that were truly incorrect were these three Rust Belt states, and Donald Trump didn't win them by a large margin either. They were within the margin of error. If he won Pennsylvania by 10%, yes, the polls would be 100% inaccurate because it had no possibility, even because that is a 10% margin. Okay, Wisconsin, you can't necessarily make the best argument for it, but it was only around a 5% lead, a little bit more than 5% for Hillary Clinton in Wisconsin. Trump did swing it by a considerable amount, but Michigan and Pennsylvania, it wasn't that drastic of a swing. I don't think anyone expected the Rust Belt to go, but that doesn't mean that the polling numbers were wrong. They always hinted at these races getting very close. And also, let's go ahead and take a look at the no tosses map. You're going to see exactly what you see in this map right here. 266 for Trump, 272 for Hillary Clinton. Nevada's red, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are blue. You can't point out another district or state that was wrong because Maine's second was red. Okay, even Nebraska's second was presumably more Republican than it actually was. So when it came down to it, the polling numbers weren't necessarily the most inaccurate. And also, if you look over here, Connecticut, Delaware, Oregon, likely Democratic. Connecticut, Delaware, Oregon, likely Democratic in the general election. Okay, Washington got more Democratic. New Jersey moved a little bit more to the right. Rhode Island got a little bit more Democratic. Okay, Virginia went a little bit more to the left. Minnesota went a little bit more to the right. New Mexico went a little bit more to the left. However, one thing is clear. Almost all of these states were right about the winner of the state when it came down to the presidential election. And also, let's just not look at 2016. Let's look at 2012. Let's look at the no toss-ups map. If anything, the polling numbers, they don't sample enough Democrats according to these numbers, right? Obama has 303 electoral votes. Romney has 235. Those were not the real results. Romney actually got 206, and Barack Obama got 332 electoral votes. But let's go ahead and take a look at the 2008 no toss-up states map. Well, first of all, the final results were 365 for Obama and 173 for McCain. The no toss-ups map shows Obama with 338 and McCain at 200. So these polls seem like they have undervalued Democrats. They haven't been able to really grasp the amount of Democratic voters, and 2016 was that one time where the Republicans actually did better than the polling suggested. So that's something to note as well. And when it comes down to it, if you're taking Rasmussen and you're saying, oh, -1, okay, cool. Rasmussen was correct in 2016. I am not taking that away from them. But the other numbers weren't necessarily as wrong either. Rasmussen was just the closest of them all and the most accurate of them all. But if you're saying that Trump has a 49% approval rating, you can deal with that. But you also will have to admit that Rasmussen is showing the Democrats leading by 7% nationwide. So if you're saying the Democrats are not leading, there's going to be a Republican wave year, you're only taking the numbers you want. And that's very unfortunate because that's not something we should be doing. I understand, yes, there is a possibility of a Republican wave coming. I'm not saying all polls are correct. I'm not saying that Indiana is safe for the Democrat after that new poll that was actually taken by a Republican source, but still, regardless, I'm not saying that's correct. What I am saying is that these polls aren't always incorrect, and just because of one election where 4 states were inaccurately predicted by the polls does not invalidate every single poll that's been taken since then. So that's the main point that I'm trying to make. These polls aren't always wrong, okay? The approval polls of the president, it really doesn't matter at this point in time because he's pretty much leveling off. He's plateauing. The disapprove, not so much, but his approval rating, yeah, because there's never going to be a point where the president's going to have a 60% approval rating just based off how partisan our country has gotten, unless, of course, a drastic event happens like what happened with George Bush and his father, George Bush. But regardless, you pretty much saw the entire video. If you skip to the end, I really don't know why, because this is not one of those skip to the end videos. I understand predictions, things like that, sure. But please, if you think that the polls are inaccurate 100%, please watch the entire video. A lot of points are made, and I think it'll really help you look at it from a different light than you actually did before. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I'll see you all tomorrow.